Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for Atlanta Business Radio. Brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com. Now, here's your host.
Lee Cantor here, another episode of Atlanta Business Radio, and this is going to be a good one. But before we get too far into it, I'd like to thank our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these important interviews. Today on Atlanta Business Radio, we have an old friend, Katharine Chestnut, and she is with Alkaloid Networks. Welcome, Katharine.
Thank you, Lee. It's good to be back.
Well, tell us about Alkaloid. What are you doing? Just in general, what you guys are up to, and then how we'll get into how you're handling the pandemic.
Well, we are a independent co-working space. We're on the east side Beltline, near Krog Street Market, and I celebrated my 5th anniversary in the middle of the pandemic.
How'd that go? Was it a giant Zoom call with all your members?
It was. We had a virtual happy hour celebration. Because that's the way the world is right now.
I know. It's funny to see how many people are now familiar with Zoom and all the idiosyncrasies that go with the video conferencing. Yes,
I think we've all gotten very good at Zoom. I mean, I have used Zoom and virtual teaching for years and was very comfortable with it before. Little did I know that I would be using it so much, but I'm so grateful for it. And I'm so grateful for having used it in the past and comfortable with it because it gave me the ability to shift really quickly at the beginning of this.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Like your center is a place where people go to kind of get away from their home, to go and work and collaborate and hang out with other kind of like-minded people that are all pursuing a dream or a goal or a business objective. And then, all of a sudden it's like you can't do that anymore unless you're an essential service. How did the business kind of like at some point intellectually you're like, uh-oh, this is coming. Like it's like you're seeing the hurricane offshore. And then you had to kind of let everybody know. So walk us through kind of how you were dealing with that as it was kind of developing.
It was very strange, and it happened so fast. It seemed like it just went overnight from one day to the next or 1 hour to the next. It escalated so quickly. And, I first started noticing fewer people in the co-working space. And then, I'm reading about it and hearing about it and I'm like, what is going on? And so it became obvious pretty quickly. I would say the second week of March that I needed to do something to take care of the safety of the community. And the community is made up not just of solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, freelancers. Over half of my members here are remote employees. So they have either a shared desk or a dedicated desk or a private office, and their headquarters is somewhere else. So the taking care of the community was super important to me. I mean, that's been my number one focus for over 5 years now. So I decided immediately that I actually closed a week before the mayor of Atlanta issued the shelter-in-place order because I wanted to keep the community safe. Now, the people could still come get their mail. The essential services people, there's a chiropractor in here, there's a hypnotherapist. They still came in even during the shelter-in-place. But I decided that, if I can't see everybody every day and I can't have events for everybody, I needed to figure out how to bring the community together even more so. And I did that a number of ways, and I had already been doing some of it, but I just made it more robust.
And that's a good lesson for business owners, that when you have that true north, when you know that, your why of doing things is the community, and then you're just trying to serve that community, and then you just have to adjust accordingly. So that made decision making in some ways, I'm sure, easier, because you knew that you were of utmost importance was the community.
Right. And some of the things that I was already doing, we already came together somewhat regularly to chat, and I moved that to Zoom almost immediately. And on top of that, we also host what I call mastermind sessions with each other in person, and I shifted those to be online as well into Zoom. And most of the time, those conversations are using the expertise of one of my members, but sometimes I get people that aren't a part of the space in here as well to speak to us. So that was important. The other thing that I also did was we started creating accountability calls. So we would do that like in person, right? And now we were doing it regularly on Monday and Friday and checking in with each other on Zoom. So again, providing the support for people. And then also on my Slack channel, I created a channel called Bright Side, because there was a lot of doom and gloom out there, and we needed to see things that made us feel a little better, even if it was just a picture of your cat or a funny meme or the flowers, growing in your yard because it's spring in Atlanta. But the whole thing, I decided really quickly, I think by March 17th, 18th, I had made it free.
Wow.
So the virtual coworking membership was free, because I knew there were a lot of people having to work from home that had never done that before, that were having to deal with being isolated. They didn't have that structured environment anymore, and they had a lot of distractions at home, which is another reason why people come in here. So I knew that I wanted to also support the community at large as well. And people have responded really, really well to that.
Now, do you see any of the things that you implemented because of the pandemic maybe being ongoing beyond the pandemic? Because at some point this is going to be over.
When is the question? I think on some level there will be a free virtual co-working membership. I mean, it still exists right now. We have a co-working sprint check-ins on Tuesdays and Thursday afternoons at 2:00. And a lot of people, if they're finding themselves getting distracted and not focusing, I mean, work sprints are not new. And doing them with somebody is not new necessarily, but doing them this way, and that may be somewhat, that's a little bit new, not new, but new to a lot of people. So I think that offering is going to be around for a good while. I also created a new level of membership called the WFH, the Work From Home membership. It's like the lowest level entry point that you can get to be a member here, but it gives you access to all of the other online and in-person events when the in-person events happen again. But it gives you more access to the community. So I also wanted to create that to make it a little bit easier for people who might get told, oh, hey, you don't get to come back to the office, and they really need to get out of their house because they're ready to either kill their children or their spouse or they've gained 20 pounds because the refrigerator's there all the time.
Now, in your organization, now that at least here where I'm at, they're starting to become more and more people venturing out a little bit more. This week more than last week, last week more than the week before. Is that happening there as well, where now you're starting to have to deal with, okay, now people are coming in, I have to make them feel safe here, so now I got to kind of ramp up the cleaning and disinfecting and things like that?
I was working on that 7 weeks ago, because I knew that at some point people were going to want to come back. Yes. And yes, people are coming back in. People are trickling in slowly but surely. I did put in some safety requirements. There's a lot of things that I have done. I've purchased 8 air scrubbers, which are located throughout the space because I have a large space. I've increased the cleaning frequency from the cleaning crew. I also go around myself daily and disinfect like high touch areas as well. I managed to get my hands on some hand sanitizer, like 8 gallons of it, which that stuff is hard to come by. There's also disinfectant located throughout the space in every conference room, bathroom, common space, kitchen, all of that. So I'm also asking my members to help me to keep the space safe. I am requiring that people wear masks when they're coming and going, or if they're in the common spaces, if they're at their desk or they are in their private office, they don't have to wear a mask. But I am asking people to wear masks for right now. I don't know how long that will last, but I'm just doing what I can to keep the space as safe as possible. I understand that new information is coming out about how the virus is transmitted, but for now, this is the way it's going to be. I even went and got tested myself. Not that I was having any symptoms, but I wanted to do yet one more thing to let the members know that I was looking out for the safety of the community.
Now, you said you're located right on the Beltline. What's the Beltline like? Because that's kind of a superhighway for, walkers and bikers. What are you seeing there in terms of, people using the Beltline? Are more people out and about? How's that looking?
Yes, and there's lots of people that aren't social distancing, that aren't wearing masks. And myself personally, I did not get on the Beltline for 2 months because it was, especially on the weekends, especially in the spring in Atlanta when people are already ready to get back out in the spring. It's usually a mob scene, and even more so when I would, there were a couple of days where I only live 4 blocks from here, so I usually walk, and I would see it, and I was just like, nope, I'm going to walk around the building. I'm going to walk the other way so I don't get on the Beltline for a half a block to get to the office. I think people are being more serious than they were, those first couple weeks when people were just like, it was a free for all. And people are slowly coming out. I think it's like anywhere in the country, there are people that just feel like this isn't really happening to them, or it's some big conspiracy and they're not going to partake. And then there's the other extreme. So, I personally, I feel like I fall somewhere in the middle, but in terms of this community, I have to do what I feel is going to be right to take care of the people here, because we don't know what to expect.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the network. You're part of the independent kind of co-working space folks in town. How is the morale of that group?
Interesting. So as the president of the Atlanta Co-working Alliance, very early on, it was interesting. Actually, I went for a tour at a space, I think the first week of March, and it was pretty empty. And we were both kind of laughing and going, well, we don't know what to expect. And we were washing our hands. We weren't wearing masks yet. But we had no idea. And unfortunately, that space, along with a few other, they get 70 or 80% of their revenue from conference room rentals. And that's a big hit. I know that there's another space that's part of the alliance that is converting a conference room into a private office for the next 6 months because they need the revenue and they're not going to get it from conference room usage. And, she sent an email out to her members and they understand. Everybody's ready for this to be over, but I think that's true across the board. And some of the members, I actually have a poll people are doing in terms of requirements of what people are asking their members to do and what they're doing for the space, very similar things to what I'm doing. And a lot of what I'm doing feels like the right thing to do and makes sense. But I also got a lot of support from my global coworking associations that I'm a part of. And that's really been helpful to get support from women who co-work or, Kat Johnson's group or the global unconferencing co-working conference. So all of those associations have been really helpful. I mean, they responded so quickly, and it's always been a very, what do I want to say, sharing type of group, very generous, very supportive, that I've seen over the last 5 years. And those people responded immediately.
Now,
and that was great.
Yeah, I think that's one of the advantages the independent folks have is that they have this collaboration and kind of a trusted sounding board where they can lean on each other during these tough times. And especially you being that catalyst here locally and tapping into the global brand and the global work that's being done that kind of shares that information and trickles it down. I think that's so important in any community, and you're really providing an important service to the folks here in town. So we appreciate that.
You're welcome. I started the Alliance last year because I, again, felt so much generosity and support from the global co-working community that it just made sense that we should do that locally. And it's been lovely. There are 14 spaces that are a part of the Alliance now. And we're having our monthly meetings on Zoom too right now.
Now, moving forward as things change, like you said, there's some obviously big shifts in the marketplace, but on some sides, I think there could be some opportunity because as more and more large organizations kind of are saying, hey, you got to shelter in place and work from home now, which is new for a lot of people. As they become feeling more comfortable, that might be opportunities for these independent co-working spaces to get some of them as members now that maybe hadn't considered this in the past because they were going into an office.
Absolutely. That speculation or that conversation has been flying around for a couple months that there will be more demand for private offices. Some people will have to reconfigure their spaces where they have either shared desks or dedicated desks. Fortunately, I've always let the members have a lot of space here. I didn't cram people in, but there are places that are having, like I said, remove furniture or indicate where you can go and where you can't go. But there is definitely room for this new distributed workforce to be coming to see us. And one of the things that the Alliance that we instituted at the beginning of the year, little did we know, is that we have network benefits. So if you're a member at Alkaloid and you have to go to a meeting, let's say in Beaufort, you can go work at Toast and Jam, which is one of our participating spaces, for the day for free, because that's once a month, because that's part of it. And some people provide discounts on top of that for conference rooms or mailing services, printing services, like Edwin Jarvis in Avondale Estates.
So now, if somebody wanted to learn more, maybe they are kind of going stir crazy and they want to at least tap into the virtual side of Alkaloid and maybe eventually be brave enough to coincide. What's the website for Alkaloid?
It's short and sweet, alkaloid.net, ALKALOID.net. And on the first page, you will see a pop-up that talks about the virtual co-working. You can go and look at that. If you want to see more about the precautions that I'm taking and that I'm also asking my members to help me with, just go to the blog page and you'll see a blog post that talks about the safety measures that are going to be going on here.
Good stuff, Katharine. Thank you so much for all that you do. It's important work, and we appreciate you.
Thank you. And thank you for having me back, Lee. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right. This is Lee Cantor. We will see you all next time on Atlanta Business Radio. And remember, please support our sponsor, OnPay. Without them, we could not be sharing these important stories.
Today's episode of Atlanta Business Radio is brought to you by OnPay. Built in Atlanta, OnPay is the top-rated payroll and HR software anywhere. Get 1 month free at onpay.com.